The first thing I noticed wasn't the empty chair. It was the way she looked at the plate. A young woman stood near the exit of a small diner in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, her hand trembling on the door handle. Her eyes kept drifting back toward the sandwich, sitting untouched on the table. She looked hungry. Not the kind of hungry that comes from skipping lunch because you're busy. The kind that settles deep into a person's face. After too many difficult days. The kind people try desperately to hide. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still matters, if you believe hope can appear when life feels impossible, and if you believe people deserve compassion, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts around the world. My name is Matthew Carter, and at the time, I was 34 years old, working long hours as a building inspector. Every Friday evening, I stopped at the same family-owned diner on my way home. It wasn't fancy. The booths were worn, the coffee was average, and the menu hadn't changed in years. But it felt familiar. That evening, rain tapped softly against the windows, while the smell of fresh bread filled the room. I had just received my meal when the young woman walked in. She looked to be around 26. Her dark brown hair was tied back carelessly, and her clothes were neat but worn from repeated use. She carried a small purse that looked almost empty. The waitress greeted her warmly and guided her to a booth near the entrance. The woman smiled politely and ordered a sandwich and soup. Then she sat quietly, staring at her phone without really looking at it. A few minutes later, her food arrived, but she never touched it. Instead, she opened her purse. Then, she froze. Even from several tables away, I could see the panic spreading across her face. She searched one pocket, then another. Then another. Her breathing changed. She checked. Whatever. Again and again, growing more desperate each time. The waitress approached her table. The woman lowered her head. A few moments later, she stood up, leaving the untouched meal behind. She moved toward the door. Something about that moment stopped me. Maybe it was the shame in her eyes. Maybe it was because years earlier, after losing my father and struggling through college, I had known what it felt like to count every dollar. Or maybe it was simply because no one should have to walk away hungry. I stood and quietly spoke to the waitress before the young woman could leave. Then I walked outside. Rain had begun falling harder. The woman stood beneath the awning, trying unsuccessfully to hide her tears. I introduced myself and gently explained that her meal had already been taken care of. At first, she looked confused, then embarrassed. Then something unexpected happened. She broke down completely. The tears she had been fighting suddenly poured out. For several minutes, she couldn't even speak. When she finally managed to explain, her story shattered my heart. Her name was Hannah Brooks. 3 months earlier, she had lost her job when the company she worked for closed unexpectedly. She had spent weeks applying everywhere she could. Savings disappeared. Bills piled up. Rent consumed almost everything she had left. That morning, she had attended yet another job interview. She thought she had enough money for a small meal afterward, but somewhere during the day, the last cash she had was gone. Maybe it had fallen out. Maybe she had miscounted. She wasn't even sure anymore. All she knew was that she hadn't eaten properly in nearly 2 days. What hurt most wasn't the hunger. It was the feeling that she was becoming invisible. People saw her smiling. People saw her trying. But nobody saw how hard she was fighting just to stay afloat. I invited her back inside. Together we sat in a booth. The waitress brought fresh soup and a warm sandwich. The first bite seemed to bring Hannah to tears all over again. Not because of the food, because someone had noticed. Sometimes people don't need a miracle. Sometimes they just need proof that they matter. Over the next hour, we talked. She told me about growing up with her grandmother, attending church every Sunday, and dreaming of becoming a social worker. She had spent years helping others, but now found herself needing help for the first time. Before leaving, I gave her the business card of a friend who managed a non-profit housing organization. They often needed administrative staff. I honestly didn't expect much to come from it. But 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Hannah. Her voice sounded completely different. Hope had returned. The nonprofit had hired her. Not only that, but they had discovered she had remarkable organizational skills and a genuine passion for helping struggling families. For the first time in months, she felt stable again. Months turned into a year. Then, one afternoon, I received an invitation to a community fundraiser. When I arrived, I saw Hannah standing on a stage speaking to hundreds of people. She wasn't talking about herself. She was talking about kindness. She told the audience that the turning point in her life wasn't a job offer. It wasn't a paycheck. It wasn't even a meal. It was the moment a stranger chose to see her when she felt invisible. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. And before we reach the ending, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that changed your life? Leave a comment below and share your story. Someone reading it today might need that encouragement more than you realize. After the event, Hannah introduced me to several families she had helped through her work. Listening to their stories, I realized something beautiful. The kindness given to one person had multiplied. One meal had become hundreds of meals. One encouraging moment had become countless acts of compassion. One person choosing to care had created a chain of hope that continued long after that rainy evening. As the sun set over the Iowa skyline, Hannah smiled and thanked me once more. But the truth was, I wasn't the hero of her story. She was. She had endured uncertainty, fear, disappointment, and loneliness without giving up. She had chosen resilience when quitting would have been easier. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more uplifting stories. Every interaction helps spread messages of hope and kindness to people who may be struggling silently. As I drove home that night, I kept thinking about something Hannah had said. She believed that every person carries an invisible burden, and every act of kindness is a chance to lighten it. Maybe that's the lesson we all need to remember. You never know who is standing at the door, ready to walk away hungry. You never know who feels forgotten. And you never know how a simple act of compassion can change the course of someone's life forever. Sometimes, the smallest kindness becomes the biggest miracle, and sometimes, all it takes is noticing someone who thought nobody could see them anymore.